What's going on, Jerome's? So there's been some developments around the National Football League that potentially impacts the Vikings' decision about keeping quarterback Jaren Hall, the pride of BYU, on the 53-man roster or practice squad. Now, it was likely that he was going to be on the practice squad as it is, as the Vikings would keep Darnold, Nick Mullins, as well as Hall on the 53, just like they did with his rookie season. Plus the whole gong show last year with the Passionate and Mullins coming in. Vikings want as many quarterbacks as possible. But with the new third emergency quarterback rule that the NFL owners adopted back in March, there was a possibility that he would be down on the practice squad. Once he got through initial waivers, he could be protected all season. He could protect up to 4 players on the practice squad every week. And Hall could be elevated as emergency third quarterback from the practice squad and not count against the game day 47 or 48-man roster. You can dress 47 players. You can dress 48 if you have 8 offensive linemen. I kind of miss the days when we could just have 46. Anyways. But also back in the day, so 1969, Joe Cap, 40 for 60. There's only 40 guys on the team. Anyways, but yeah, so the emergency third quarterback rule, which is adopted, and everyone thought was going to be kosher and good to go, like you could basically have 49 players on your active game day roster. Nope. Not so much. So Tom Pelissero put this out. Important note, as teams construct their initial 53-man rosters, NFL teams were informed that the NFLPA vetoed the revised emergency third quarterback rule that would have allowed teams to elevate a bona fide quarterback from the practice squad an unlimited number of times. So the rule reverted to the 2023 version, which says the emergency third quarterback must be on the 53-man roster, not an elevation. Continues. Allowing teams to elevate the third quarterback each week would have amounted to a sort of legal stashing, which the union doesn't want. Of course, teams can still elevate an extra quarterback from the practice squad. They just wouldn't get an exception from the game day roster limit. So basically, this is calculated by the NFLPA, but I don't understand it. I mean, you're getting more jobs on game day, and also you're freeing up a 53-man roster spot for someone who isn't a quarterback. But anyways, like, I honestly feel like of all the sports unions, the NFL has the worst. And they actively work against members of their constituents who aren't quarterbacks, but it was besides the point. Anyways, so a rundown of the 2023 rules as adopted last year. Question, was an emergency third quarterback? This is from NFL.com. A club may designate a bona fide quarterback, so you can't just be like, hey, our outside linebacker identifies as a quarterback today. As an inactive emergency third quarterback for a regular season or postseason game, the player must be listed on the game day administration report, which is submitted prior to or at the 90-minute meeting, subject to the following. The emergency third quarterback must be on the club's 53-player roster. The player cannot be an elevated practice squad player. Now, they changed that for 2024, or they thought they had. The club's starting quarterback QB1 and its backup QB2 must also be on the club's 53-player roster. So their thing is like, hey, we'll just elevate the practice squad guy and we'll say that he's QB2. Nah, that ain't going to work. A club must have 2 bona fide quarterbacks on its 47, 48-player game day active list to designate an emergency third quarterback. Remember, 47 active on game day, 48 if you have 8 offensive linemen. A club cannot designate an emergency third quarterback if it has 3 or more bona fide quarterbacks on its 47, 48-player game day active list. So you can't have 3 on your 53, and then you bring one up from the practice squad. Question, when is an emergency third quarterback permitted to enter the game? An emergency third quarterback is permitted to enter a game only if the club's 2 active quarterbacks are unable to play, either by disqualification, which I would love to see. Like, more often than not, it's obviously injury, but a little DQ action, come on. Including, for example, if quarterback 1 is unable to play and quarterback 2 has been evaluated for an injury, but also QB1, QB2 could return once they're cleared from injury, right? So that's basically what it is. So you can't have your emergency third quarterback sub in for the starter without going through your QB2. QB1 and 2 must be DQ'd or incapacitated in some form, right? And going down again, this sort of. Again, the timing of this is obviously calculated by the NFLPA just to throw a wrench in things. But Pro Football Rumors did up a great write-up about this and its fault because some of the rules are confusing and how this affects the 53-man rosters per se. This is what Pro Football Rumors wrote. The NFL's emergency third quarterback rule will still exist this season, but not in the form the league intended. The NFLPA will block the updated rule from taking effect. From Tom Pelissero's tweets. The offseason update was set to allow teams an unlimited number of practice squad elevations for a third quarterback, effectively giving clubs a player that could continue to stash on the practice squad before moving him up to game day rosters without using waivers. The union will stand in the way of this. Doing so at this juncture certainly stands to affect teams' roster decisions, as clubs have until 3 p.m. Central Time Tuesday. Ooh, PFR. That's right. Getting the time zone thing right. Since the 2020 CBA revamped the practice squad, clubs have 3 elevations per player at their disposals. That means a practice squad player can be elevated to a game day rooster up to 3 times. This allows teams to get around the waiver process for a bit. The NFL sought to have an emergency third quarterback be eligible for elevation throughout the season. This would have given teams flexibility regarding quarterback depth charts. It continues. Instead, the union is seeking to prevent teams from stashing quarterbacks on practice squads throughout a season. Pelissero adds, the rule will revert to its 2023 form, which we went through. The rules 2023 form stipulated teams could designate their emergency passer 90 minutes before kickoff. The teams must have the quarterback 3, blah, 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 blah. Though teams must be more strategic in how they set up their depth charts, as they must factor waivers into the equation once again. After a player is elevated 3 times, he must be signed to the active roster. Teams would then need to cut their quarterback 3s in order to move them back to the practice squads, injecting risk for clubs aiming to carry just 2 quarterbacks on their active rosters during the regular season. So theoretically, it could be a spot where the Vikings can still put Jaren Hall on the practice squad, even though, yes, I think that he will be on the 53 because they had him on the 53 last year, and it just makes sense. They'll cut corners elsewhere. But Darnold, Mullins, and then you could, theoretically, elevate Jaren Hall as the emergency third quarterback, use up his 3 practice squad elevations, then put him back on the 53, and then waive him again. Well, maybe the Vikings are a bad example because, again, I think Hall stays. But this is something that teams certainly could still do throughout the league. Have 2 quarterbacks on the roster, and then just have a gong show of quarterbacks on their practice squad. Going back and forth and up and down, releasing up to the 53, off the 53, that whole things, all that song and dance. But the proposed rule would have allowed teams, once they got the quarterback onto the practice squad, be elevated at an unlimited number of times, which frankly would have been awesome. Clubs may now be more open to carrying 3 quarterbacks on their active rosters, which would affect depth at other positions. The union understandably wants to see reserve quarterbacks potentially have upward mobility elsewhere via waivers, rather than be trapped as a third stringer on teams who have designated them as the emergency option, which the initial notion is fine, but now you have guys trapped as third string quarterbacks on the 53-man roster with no potential for upward mobility, and also you're taking a 53 spot away from someone else who could contribute on game days in a more tangible way. So I don't know, like I understand the impetus of vetoing at this point, but in practice, I don't think it's going to accomplish what they want it to accomplish. So, again, the NFLPA just like whatever. But timing of this, it does. I'm sure some teams now who are banking on that rule, I mean, they just got a rude awakening, and also some teams have already made cuts. So they may have been banking on this rule where they may have trimmed down to 2 quarterbacks on the roster, and the third quarterback who they would have kept on the 53 could have been gone. Like the Dolphins and Mike White and Skylar Thompson as their backup. They might have kept Mike White as QB3 instead of waiving him and now trying to get him onto the practice squad or something else. Don't know, man. But long story longer, I think that the Vikings were likely going to keep Jaren Hall in the 53 anyway. But also that was part of our reasoning for trying to get him onto the practice squad is because of the new rules. But new rules are out the window. Whatever. Jaren Hall on the 53 as QB3, and we'll go from there. Ooh. Also, hey, how about Jaren Hall on the active roster, QB1, Slinging Sam Darnold, QB2, Jaren Hall, emergency third quarterback, Nick Mullins. Anyways, your thoughts are thoughts, new rules, veto, blah, blah, blah. You guys are the best. You know what to do. Skull production value.